We're
Okay, we
live.
are live.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Rob Humby, Leader and Executive Member for Hampshire 2050 and Corporate Services, and welcome you all to my Decision Day, which is currently being broadcast live on YouTube via the County Council's website. I think all of you are actually, but just to check, if you could all put yourself on mute. If you haven't, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I'd just like to welcome councillors. Councillor Ros Chad, the Deputy Leader, is present on the call. Welcome, Ros. And Councillor, I think Adrian Collett is present as well. Is that right, Adrian? Yeah, okay. And Adrian is the opposition spokesman. I know we have various other councillors present as well, and I'll bring those in as and when their paper comes along that they wish to speak on. So we've had a few deputations received, and as I say, I'll invite the members to speak at that point. So we should go straight on to agenda item 1. That's the county-wide moving traffic enforcement policy. And I think, Dominic, you're presenting the paper. Dominic, please. Yeah, if you can give a brief overview of the paper. Thank you very much.
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Leader. Thank you. So I will give a very quick introduction. The paper is to seek approval for a policy governing the relatively newly acquired powers of enforcing moving traffic offences. The policy is attached to the report, and as I say, the recommendation is to seek your approval for that, alongside approval for delegated authority to make minor revisions to the policy in the event of, for example, changes to government policy. Policy has been drafted to be consistent with national guidance in the area, and really that's probably all I need to say on this one.
Yeah, okay, and I suppose it's worth making it clear. Adrian, I'll come to you in a second. I suppose it's worth making it clear for other people that are on the call or potentially watching that a lot of these papers have been through an extensive process, very often through scrutiny and various other meetings as well before we get to this point. So I think it's worth just making that clear. Adrian, Councillor Collett, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, obviously this policy will prove itself when it's actually implemented and we see what happens and how it works out. But there was one point in the policy that worried me, and that's on page 13, and it's under Principle 1. I mean, the principles themselves all seem very sensible, but Principle 1 says enforcement of moving traffic restrictions at locations where there has been a history of collisions, I think it's collisions, it says collusions, resulting in road users being injured. So it's the same problem we've had before. Are we waiting till people are hurt before we will enforce, or can we not take enforcement action before people are hurt? And I raise that realising that the paper makes clear that the financial of this should be cost neutral. So if we do a little bit of extra enforcement in order to intervene before people are hurt, it shouldn't cost us any more to do that, because obviously we will harvest fines from those who are acting in an irresponsible way. So I'd like to suggest that that be amended.
Yeah, I'll let Dominic come back. I think it's something that we've discussed many times before in terms of prioritisation, in terms of where things are happening. But I'll take your point. Dominic, would you like to comment on that, on Adrian's point?
Thank you. Well, firstly, apologies for the misspelling. It should certainly have been collisions and not collusions. Apologies, that will certainly be corrected. Yeah, as the leader says, it really is about prioritisation, and I suppose the other consideration that we need to take into account is that it's only injury accidents that are recorded, so we don't have a formal record of other accidents. That's not to say that we can't use the policy to target a specific location if there is a large-scale concern at a location. But equally, we wouldn't have the records, and it would be quite difficult to look at every single incident where perhaps there are reports of incidents where someone's using that to support a case they might be trying to make for a location.
Adrian, would like to come back? Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you. Just to say, obviously, everyone would agree that where people are being hurt must be a priority. I'm not arguing against that. Yeah. What I'm saying is that here, any additional enforcement would be cost neutral, and therefore we're not restricted in the same way that we are when spending scarce resources in other areas of work. So I'd like us to look again at the wording of that policy. I think there will be times when enforcement is appropriate in order to prevent accidents, and our policy should allow us to do that.
I think there's probably, Adrian, enough in the policy in terms of, as Dominic has said, if we start getting incidents where there are reports, there's enough flex in there to make we could then prioritise. So I think I'm satisfied, and I take your point about being cost neutral as well. And I think it's something that would sort of naturally happen, if you like, once we get reported incidents, that you would look. This happens with our normal policies within highways, where they're effectively, when we've done some sort of monitoring and data collection previously, and especially if circumstances change to a certain area or a certain junction or something, and you go back and reassess. So I think there's enough, take your point, I think there's enough movement within the paper to allow that to happen. As Dominic said, if there is a set of circumstances that increases in an area. Dominic, is that correct? Just make sure that I've got that.
Yes, that would be my interpretation as well.
Yeah, okay. So, Adrian, I'm going to sort of say, noting your comments on that, but I'm satisfied the paper is sufficient to allow that to happen, and we'll keep that monitoring. And I will make sure that we do, and if there is anything, or you see any circumstances that we certainly come back to, report back to members generally on that. Are you satisfied with that? I think that's the best way to approach at this stage.
Well, I think I don't quite agree with that, because I think this work is quite specific. So I think we'll just have to agree to disagree. But certainly, if we see incidents cropping up that are prevented by this, then yes, we'll flag this up.
Yeah, and of course, as we do that, we'll gather more data, and we'll get more information. We'll be informed actually in terms of the policy itself. So I'm satisfied with that as you are. But I take your point and acknowledge the point that you've made as well. Just checking, there's no other members. Can't see any other hands or anybody else wishing to speak. So I will very happily accept the recommendations as set out in paragraphs 2 to 3 on page 5. Louise, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 2, just swapping my screens. So this is the Andover Road Winchester strategy, and we do have deputations on this. And the first one is from Councillor Caroline Horrell. Caroline, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, good afternoon, Leader. Thank you for allowing me to speak at your decision day today.
Afternoon, good to see you. So over to you, thank you. Then I'll go to Councillor Russell Gordon-Smith after you. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me raise some issues at your decision day today. And thank you for the paper to officers. It clearly sets out your current position. Just for those who are not familiar with me, I'm Councillor Caroline Horrell. I'm a City Councillor at Winchester City Council, and I represent the Wonston and Mittledever ward, which includes the Sir John Moore site you refer to in your paper. And I want to address one particular part of your paper today, namely the Andover Road. Yep. Just to put on the record, Leader, there is one additional piece of data which was submitted to the county, but you haven't referred to today. Back in November, December 2021, Winchester Conservative councillors and campaigners distributed a Andover Road North survey, which went to parts of the Winchester area, St Barnabas, the Worthies, and the Littleton parish, which I represent, to poll residents about what they thought of the closure of the Andover Road North. There were 764 responses, and there was an overwhelming opposition to closing the road, over 91%, and 78% supported keeping both the Andover Road North and the Winchester Avenue fully open to all traffic. And obviously since then, you've also received the Kings Barton petition of some 3,000 signatures objecting to the closure, which supports the findings that we also discovered. And I believe that information should be on record with one of your previous portfolio holders, Leader. It is clear that the local residents perhaps have a different view from about the future of the Andover Road since the original decision was taken in 2012 as part of the Carla Planning Commission. And also much has changed in the area since that time. Your report identifies the Winchester Movement Strategy, which was both led on at the City Council and by you and I. We were part of that. And we are I know, supportive of the movement strategy. And it indicates the need for a northern park and ride, which is absolutely not in doubt. But your report today assumes that this is associated with the Sir John Moore development, which I think is far from being confirmed at this stage. There is absolutely no clarity at the moment about a master plan for the site from the DIO. One is promised, but we haven't seen it. And in fact, we've virtually had no news from the DIO for the last year. And I suggest that there's a huge presumption in your paper that it will proceed there as you assume at this time. In fact, the introduction of about 1,000, if that's the number eventually, that goes on the Sir John Moore site, the introduction of those homes to that area is a significant change and a very different assumption from when the original planning application was made by Carla all those years ago. Your report refers to future development sites on the northern stretch of the Andover Road. The Reg 18, currently in development of Winchester, only identifies one site, the Sir John Moore site, unless you are party to additional conversations. I'm not aware that Winchester City Council is supporting other sites, so I assume the plural you refer to is incorrect. I do hope that is the case, because I know there'd be great concern from residents if there was another site being proposed. Chair, I don't know whether you've driven the Winchester Avenue recently, but my question to you, is the road fit for purpose? Is it safe for those homes with entrances so close to the edge of the road? I certainly would be extremely concerned if I had children in my house living in such close proximity to a major route. The Andover Road and the connecting road network, much of which I represent, as you know, is used extensively when there is a problem on the A34, the 303 or the M3. The traffic all diverts and they follow their sat-navs. The traffic level and types of vehicles, as you know, is overwhelming. And so my question is the Winchester Avenue currently wide enough for HGVs and buses together? Does it satisfy recommendations under HS2 diversion routes for roads regularly used by buses and HGVs, needing passing widths of 6.8 metres, I believe, but you're the highways expert, I'm sure you'll advise me if that isn't correct. And is the Winchester Avenue built to the specification you require as the highway authority for the traffic that will be proposed to use it? If not, given improvements may be required, would a conversation with Carla about their permissions not be applicable? And Chair, that's where it comes to the hub of what I'd like to ask you this afternoon. Have your officers spoken to Carla to consider an amendment to their planning application, which might find favour with you as the Highways Authority, the City Council, which agreed the Planning Commission, and importantly, residents? If no, can I suggest that you should defer today's decision about the Andover Road until such a discussion has taken place? This would demonstrate to all those residents who are concerned about the decision that you're proposing that an opportunity for further dialogue has actually taken place, especially since so many of the factors have changed since the 2012 Planning Commission. Chair, I hope you and your officers would consider this a reasonable step and not one that's meant to be difficult, but one that would be more inclusive and allow a broader conversation than perhaps has taken place today, to date, and particularly with Carla, and one that you could support given the level of representations that you as a county council have received to date. Thank you for your time, Leader.
Caroline, thank you very much. Lots of questions. What I'll do is take the representation from all the members speaking. So, and then the officer will present the paper, and I'm sure has listened carefully to all the questions you have raised and look to do and answer some of those questions that you've raised. So thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
now going to go to Councillor Russell Gordon-Smith. Russell, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here and I can hear you, and I hope you can hear me.
We certainly can. Would you like to go on with your deputation, please? Thank you.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank the leader for allowing me to speak. I appreciate this gesture. What I'd like to say concerns the Cart and Horses Junction which is paragraph 35 to 42 in the agenda item. Many residents in the Itchen Valley and councillors in the parish councils within the ward have expressed their concern on the issue of the dangerous and confusing junction at the Cart and Horses. And it's on their behalf that I'm making this deputation. In the past, I've raised the issue of road safety in Alresford. For example, the idea of introducing a speed limit between Bishop Sutton and Alresford. The standard reply has been there's been no fatalities recorded, so nothing much can be done. I'm always slightly puzzled by this attitude. On construction sites under health and safety regulations, near misses are recorded precisely so that actions can be taken before anything more devastating happens. And this is not the case at the Cart and Horses. There have been deaths and injuries in the past, several recently last year in the autumn, and unless something is done rapidly, there will continue to be more deaths and serious injuries. The accidents involve cars, motorcycles, cyclists, and let us also not forget pedestrians, such as Jonathan Whitfield. Now, for many residents in the Itchen Valley, the B3047 is their favoured route into the city, particularly if they're going to the north side. And residents from Northington and Brighton travel down the A33 to reach the city. Paragraph 25 recognises the B3047 as a key route. So whichever route is taken, the traffic flow across the junction creates conflicts. And of course, many drivers, perhaps unfamiliar with the A33, travel westwards along the beguilingly fast and straight and often very empty A33 and approach the junction with the B3047 at excess speed going down the hill. Now, I know that the speed limit was reduced from 50 to 40, and that's obviously, one hopes, helped. But many people say to me that the recent, well, not so recent, changes to the signage have created even more confusion. Driver error is often suggested as the cause of these accidents. Well, one does wonder that if a lot of drivers are making the same error or errors, there is likely to be a problem that needs to be addressed. And this is precisely what happens on construction sites with near misses. Now, I know the option of a roundabout, a double roundabout or signals has been suggested. And obviously I can't make a judgment as to the feasibility of this or what the best layout may be. We all recognise that the junction is awkward and elongated, and there's restrictions on the amount of space available and so on. So obviously Hampshire Highways will look at these, and I know we'll develop the best option and we can work on from there. And this is a long-term solution. However, it's clear that this is obviously going to take, well, probably years to address, combined with the Junction 9 improvements and so on. And I think I've been asked to draw to your attention the need for short-term improvements of maybe quite simple changes in the signage and in road markings to address this problem as soon as possible. I know that all of 3 ward councillors, we've all discussed this together with the parishes, and I think we're all in agreement that there is a great urgency to addressing this issue. And I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Russell, thank you very much, and appreciate the time and your thoughts you put in that in your presentation. What I would ask now, we will have county councillors to speak in a minute. At this point, I will ask Russell and Caroline to leave this meeting, but of course they're more than welcome to watch the remainder of the decision day on the live broadcast. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Russell. And I'm not sure, Louise, sorry.
Thank you
Lou.
very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. And Louise, you just confirm that has happened and just give them a second so they can rejoin. That's what I wanted to make sure I do. So there's enough time they could leave that and join. Okay. Hey, Louise.
Just, yeah, I think they've left.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So now I've got two councillors, Councillor Porter and Councillor Warwick to speak. Councillor Porter, I'm going to go to you first, and then Councillor Warwick, and then David Jelsey will present the report. So Jackie, over to you, Jackie.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at this decision day. I'm sure that you're aware that the decisions in this paper have an impact on so many residents in the Itchen Valley division and beyond. And paragraph 2 of the paper lists 3 purposes in the report, and I'd just like to address each of those in turn. So the first is the Andover Road closure. The paper centres on the movement strategy and how we plan for movement around Winchester in the future, whether that be on foot, scooter, bike, bus or in a vehicle. I'm sure there'll be new forms of transport still to come that we've not even thought of. But the position put forward by Kings Barton Residents Association has put an onus on the County Council to re-look at the decision they made in 2011 when they agreed a statement of common ground with CALA. That statement was used as a basis for the transport plans for the community of Kings Barton at the time. The petition that came forward to Hampshire County Council has been useful, and it's meant that Hampshire County Council has had to review that decision to decide whether that decision of 2011 should still be the same over 10 years later, and actually you have. You've decided that this is the case. Traffic levels are no higher than then, traffic patterns are different post-COVID. Young people want to use, I can describe the modern word, micro-mobility places, methods to go places, and if we get it right, it should be reduced even further by park and ride. So I'm really sorry to see that the reasoning behind this decision wasn't published with the decision day papers. The county councillors were actually shown that paper, and it was really useful. I think it'd be really practical to get it out to the public so they can see the reason behind the decision. But I do know the work was done, and I fully accept the outcome. So qualified officers have made the assessment, not just for the residents of the new development, but also to support the movement strategy for the whole of North Winchester. Today's decision, however, can't be underestimated for a number of reasons. It allows us all to move on, and importantly, for CALA to build out the movement infrastructure for all phases of their development. This includes details of the safe build out of all of the roads and the development, and something the residents really want to see finished. The bus stops, the junctions, the adopted roads, all the things they want to see finished we can now move on to, which will be really good. The key issue though, for them, is it a street or a road? Clarity on this is vital, and I think it's already been mentioned, but we do need to know to what standards these roads will be built, and that's what the residents want to know too. We want safe roads that people can enjoy and use, and are content that that is the best for them. So there's a vital piece though of the puzzle missing. The whole raison d'etre of the 2011 Statement of Common Ground was that for the new Kings Barton residents, there'd be high quality walking, cycling and public transport networks into Winchester direct from their new homes. So I ask, how and what changes will Hampshire County Council make for pedestrians, walkers and non-car users using the full length of the Andover Road from Wellhouse Lane to the Carfax Junction when the new Winchester Avenue opens up and the Andover Road is closed? This question is vital and definitely something that we need to address. It's going to cost money, and we need to find out how we spend the money, how we find the money to do it. So I urge you to address this as soon as possible so that we can support Kings Barton residents to use active travel. It will keep traffic to a minimum and benefit not only them but everybody else in this area too, and thus help to support the whole principle of the movement strategy. So just turning to the second point, the St John Walks Barracks. It includes brownfield land. An important policy of Winchester's local plan is to use up brownfield land before releasing greenfield, so the barrack site should be within it. And I think I have to declare an interest here. I am the Cabinet Member for Planning at Winchester. It's a non-prejudicial interest, but I am the Cabinet Member. So it's very clear that the policy is to use up brownfield land before releasing greenfield land. Movement from that site into the city will be another critical point for the master plan for the site. Only today, the Chronicle has another article that confirms the Ministry's expectation that the land will be released for homes. This is definite. The movement strategy has to plan for this. So I'm therefore pleased that this decision day includes the commitment to work with Carla on the 278 agreement on the northern junction with Wellhouse Lane and Andover Road. This is one point at which the expectation differs from the 2011 discussions, and I'm pleased it's addressed in this paper. The third point, the Cart and Horses Junction and the impact of the M3 Junction 9 works. As Kings Barton is built out, already the Wellhouse Lane traffic lights are showing a change of flow for traffic to the B3047 A33 junction, which incidentally will take traffic away from the Andover Road. When the new motorway road system's built out, then using that junction to reach the M3 will take traffic out of the centre of Winchester, which is what we always wanted to see. So I fully support the plans put forward in the paper to ensure that National Highways and the County Council work together to make the junction efficient and safe as part of the M3 Junction 9 work. And I'll support the best endeavours to raise funds to do this, and I call on our MP to do so too. I realise this decision day is about future planning of traffic movements in the northern side of the city, but I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear me say that I represent thousands when I say that a key part of the movement strategy is to ensure the Cart and Horses Junction is fit for purpose now. We want to see a plan for works to address the immediate issues, and I urge you to engage with local councillors at all levels and the local communities to do this. I realise this isn't strictly part of your remit, Councillor Humby, and it's also part of Councillor Adams-King's, but I think it is a key part of this, and it will ensure, I think, a community support for the whole plan as a whole. So I do support the principles of your decision day. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you very much, and thanks for being very clear on that. And I'm going to do the same if that's okay. I'll let Councillor Warwick speak now, and then I will go to David Jousey to report the paper and try and clarify some of those points you made, as indeed the two previous speakers as well. Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Warwick, Jan.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Humby, and thank you for allowing me to speak today to this very thorough paper that discusses the potential future of the Andover Road, which is the boundary road between mine and Councillor Porter's county divisions. Thank you also to our highways officers who took a considerable amount of time to explain the traffic studies and the work that sits behind and underpins this report. And they took time to brief Councillor Porter and myself and some of the local city councillors as well. The Andover Road, as you know, is the main route from the north in and out of the city of Winchester, and plans to close this road and divert the traffic through the newly created Winchester Avenue have existed since the granting of planning permission by the Secretary of State just over 10 years ago in 2012. In the last 10 years, however, several issues have emerged since that decision was made that are likely to impact on traffic movements and numbers in this area. And I would just like to highlight some of these. The Winchester Movement Strategy, which we've heard reference to, has been published with the aim to reduce traffic travelling in and out of the city. And in order to achieve this, we require a new and large park and ride built to the north of the city, in addition to the park and ride light that is due to be provided at the Kings Barton site. The popular and successful Peter Symonds Sixth Form College, located close to the Andover Road, continues to build on its national reputation and now has over 4,400 students travelling each day to and from this area. In addition to that, the new Barton Farm Junior School has now opened and will grow to 420 pupils. The emerging Winchester local plan will deliver an additional 1,000 homes, with a consequent average of 5,000 additional daily traffic movements at Sir John Moore Barracks site at the northern end of the Andover Road. And at the southern end of the road, there are plans for a business residential development at the station approach. And of course, we know that the M3 Junction 9 improvement works are programmed in the coming years and will impact significantly on this local road network as this is delivered. The Kings Barton community is now growing as homes are built and occupied. As the County Councillor for Winchester Downlands, my main request today is that we also realise the impact of this decision and continue to protect the residents of the adjacent settlements of both Littleton and Harestock from any additional rat-running traffic as a consequence of any future road closure. I'm particularly concerned about those living close to the Harestock and Priors Dean roads. Many of the children living here attend and walk to either Henry Beaufort, Kings Barton Primary or Harestock Primary Schools. So can I request that the traffic studies now being undertaken also include the impact on Harestock and Priors Dean roads, and look at the pavement widths, particularly along the Harestock Road, and to look also for a safe crossing point for children walking to and from schools at Priors Dean Road. Leader, this paper clarifies that neither Hampshire nor Winchester City Council can unilaterally change the planning condition to close the Andover Road. But I would ask, as Councillor Horrell has, that both authorities work closely with senior decision makers at Carla Homes to agree the best outcome for all of our residents locally. I would ask that we aim to achieve this by working in partnership to protect the emerging community at Kings Barton, to maintain their safe air quality levels, to keep the traffic noise levels down, and that we try not to divide their settlement into those living in the east and those living in the west by a large busy road. That we continue to respect the rural ethos that now exists at the new Barton Farm Primary School, and also the national and county support for increased walking and cycling. That we respect the residents of the Andover Road and the Harestock roads, who have taken more than their fair share of sleep disturbance and disruption following overnight diverted HGV motorway traffic associated with recent works on the M3. And finally, that we continue to protect the environmentally sensitive and historic areas that exist now within the Sir John Moores site by careful planning to build the new 750 or so space park and ride in the least environmentally damaging location towards the north end of the Andover Road. Thank you so much.
Professor Warwick, Jan, thank you very much, and appreciate the time and effort you put into that and the points that you've raised. So thank you for that. What I'm now going to do is ask David Jousey, the officer, to present the report. And I've made as many notes as I can from all the speakers in terms of those points, and I'm sure David has as well. So David, if I can ask you to present the report and perhaps cover as many of those points as you can as you proceed through the presentation of your report. Over to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'll try to pick up as many of those comments as possible. And so this report sets out the strategy for the Andover Road corridor in Winchester, and building upon the adopted Winchester Movement strategy, and take account of, as well as feed into the emerging Winchester City Council local plan, as well as taking account of changes to M3 Junction 9 put forward by National Highways. So this report notes representations made by stakeholders and the public to keep Andover Road open to through traffic, and the council understands the concerns that are raised over the closure of Andover Road and diversion of traffic via the Kings Barton development. As we make clear within this report, these highway changes are part of the planning application, and as such we cannot lawfully change this nor direct the developer to keep Andover Road open to all traffic. The report goes on to include a strategy for the Andover Road corridor, which includes a new large strategic park and ride site off Andover Road. Note within the report that we don't specify exactly where off the Andover Road, because we are wanting to keep options open in terms of where the opportunities might come up for that park and ride to be sited. So although Sir John Moore Barracks is referenced within the paper, that is in reference to the local plan site allocations, and this report doesn't make any predetermination where that strategic park and ride site might be off Andover Road. The strategy also kind of references that to get the best benefits and kind of benefit realisation from that park and ride, for park and ride buses to be served by a bus priority corridor on this on the Andover Road is likely to be beneficial. The strategy also outlines improvements to routes for people walking and cycling, as well as improvements to the Cart and Horse Junction to integrate with the National Highways proposals. So just to kind of pick up a little bit on some of the discussion points, we have had considerable ongoing liaison with Carla and we have discussed this approach, and they are content with our position on the closure of Andover Road. In terms of the design of Winchester Avenue, the County Council will continue to work with the developer Carla and its designers to ensure that new highway within development is fit for purpose, as far as possible within the constraints of the approved planning position. And all of this is subject to ongoing and extensive dialogue related through the Section 278 process. In terms of the connections for people walking and cycling, which was raised as one of the queries, this strategy sets out in the short term that we will focus on improving links to the city via Abbots Barton and the new shared use path that's being constructed between Kings Barton and to the other side of the railway. And this will be taken forward in the next kind of couple of years via Section 106 funding that we currently hold. As part of the wider movement strategy, we did undertake some work looking at how to improve Andover Road in terms of walking and cycling. Many of the improvements that would be required to deliver high quality facilities for walking and cycling are costly, and they might require third party land, and certainly we would need external funding from central government. So we're developing our kind of propositions for that, and in the longer term, we are looking to how we can best improve Andover Road for walking and cycling, and particularly those links from Kings Barton down towards the railway station and the city centre. In terms of the impact that the Andover Road closure might have on surrounding roads, it's worth noting that the Secretary of State, in making its decision on the Barton Farm planning application, was satisfied with the transport impact from the closure of Andover Road. We do understand that there may be changes to routes that some people drive in the area once Andover Road is closed, so we will be monitoring the impacts of traffic on surrounding roads such as Priorsdean and Harestock Road, as well as close liaison with relevant county councillors to understand issues that may arise and mitigate those issues. Finally, to come to Cart and Horses junction, this paper gives a strategic update on the junction. Comments raised at the decision day relates to the short-term safety improvements will be noted, and we will share these with our colleagues in Universal Services who lead on road safety aspects. That wraps up my summary of the paper, Councillor.
Okay, David, I will go back through just a couple of points, and I will, because I want to make sure everything has been covered. I will potentially go back to Councillor Porter and Councillor Warwick just to check. But also, Councillor Horrell made the point about future developments and said something about there was a site, said plural, and was it one site or two sites? I mean, not, you might have covered it, I just want to check.
So the draft Winchester City Local Plan Reg 18 includes a site at Sir John Moore Barracks.
Yeah.
We do understand that there is, beyond the local plan period, there may be interest in other sites to the north of Winchester, which we referenced that it be potentially in the next local plan, but that, yeah, it is beyond the current local plan period.
Beyond the local plan period, but it's correct to say that it was plural because we've allowed that within the paper, that is the potential. So that I'm satisfied with that. That would be the correct thing to do. I think that's covered a lot of the points. There was something about, she mentioned about sort of the design code, but I think we go back to the original planning application there. And Councillor Warwick made a very good point in terms of that is not within our remit in terms of the planning application, nor the city councils as well. It would be the Secretary of State. But just in terms of the points that were made that it was sort of 10 years ago, we still have to, if you like, react in terms of that application or the planning application that was current at the time. That's what we have to do. Just to be clear, we don't have any choice over that. And that's for the County Council and for the City Council, to be clear. It would be, as I say, for Carla and the Secretary of State to do that. But in terms of our role within the design of the if you like, the road as it is now, for this change and potentially in the circumstances. So but I think we made it clear in the paper about that ongoing dialogue and discussions with Carla on that.
Yes.
That's a question, David.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That's kind of very much the kind of the nub of the ongoing discussions with Carla. We want to ensure that the highway is safe and fit for purpose, and there's already been ongoing discussions, and those discussions will be continuing with Carla and their designers.
We'll continue, and you've already confirmed that there is discussions with Carla, and that is ongoing as well. So I'm pleased to hear that. Councillor Warwick also made the point about other traffic studies in Hairstock and Priors Dean, I believe it was. And I know that sort of sits slightly outside the paper, but I mean that's something that we would, certainly would accommodate and look at doing in the bigger picture anyway.
Absolutely. The strategy that's within the decision day paper does reference that we would look to monitor and manage the impacts of traffic on surrounding roads following the closure and diversion of Andover Road. So it's something that we're mindful of, and it's something that we will, as I said, monitor and if necessary mitigate any negative impacts.
Okay, pleased to hear that, and thank you. And Councillor Porter, I think we've covered most of your points, but there was also the point about keeping engaged with local councillors, Councillor Porter. I think that has happened quite a lot. Was there a specific point on that, Jack? I'm going to go back to you on this occasion just to make sure we've covered all the points that you've raised. And the same for Councillor Warwick, if there's anything I've forgotten, Councillor Warwick. Councillor Porter.
Yeah, I was just urging really to think of I realise that I'm the county councillor, so I cover both sections. But actually there are city councillors in those areas that do want to continue to engage. And I'm really pleased that you allowed Councillor Horrell and Councillor Gordon-Smith to speak today. I realise that's not the constitution, but it was extremely helpful to have it from a different point of view. I think it's always good to have a different point of view on this. And my second point really was, I accept the point that you're saying that it will be expensive to do the work on the Andover Road for walkers and cyclists. But that would be the most direct route for most of them to get into central Winchester and for many other residents along that route. Yeah. And so one of the things we sold it on to the people of Littleton and Hairstock and other places was they would have a pleasant walking and cycling route into Winchester. And we still really haven't achieved that in this decision day. So I do think it's the next phase of the plan. And I'm sure that's what I would agree.
Sorry to interrupt, Jackie, and appreciate that. And I think, well, the point I was getting to was, I think the paper does allow that in terms of that ongoing dialogue, which was, I was very keen that that paragraph went in there to allow that to happen. And I think that covers a lot of the points that you raised on that ongoing discussion will help address some of those.
And if I might just say, it just gives the certainty, the paper gives the certainty that now we can move on from that. And I think that's what I appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. And I'll come to Councillor Warwick in a second just to confirm that I've covered those points. And any points Councillor Horrell or Councillor Russell-Smith made, Jan, if that's okay, just thinking if that's okay. I just want to make the point, Jackie, you're quite right. On this occasion, did let the two city councillors speak, and it is outside, if you like, our constitution. But in this case, because of the joint work we've done with the Winchester Movement Study, I felt it was fully justified. That's a joint thing that we've done together, we funded together, and it seemed appropriate that we let the City Council speak on this case. So it is an exception to it because of that very reason. I just wanted to make that clear. Councillor Warwick, is there anything that we've missed from your point of view or any of the other City Councillors, the points they made?
No, I think you've summed it up very nicely. What I would emphasise is a lot of the pressure on surrounding areas are going on now around the Andover Road because the M3 upgrade off and on has been going on, but there have been certainly a lot of overnight closures. And that top end of the Andover Road takes the brunt as traffic comes off the M3 and heads up to the A34. And Jackie and I have had a lot of emails from existing residents, and I know Ian Ackerman has done his very best to try and mitigate, but apart from lying in that road, he's not going to be able to stop that traffic any other way, and just slowing it down and the surface. So that is a sort of here and now problem, regardless of what happens to the future of the Andover Road. And I suspect that's only going to get worse with the Junction 9 upgrade. We were starting to see some of those diversionary routes. So it's a bit of a plea from me. Can we look to mitigate a little bit now on Hairstock Road and for Priors Dean, because they are good walking routes for children, mainly school children. But I've seen them cross at times, and traffic can be busy, and they're not really designed for the amount of traffic we're starting to see on those routes. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure you weren't recommending that anybody lies in any road, just to make that absolutely clear for that. Absolutely, yeah. No, and I thank you all for that. And David, is there any last comments you'd like to make before I sort of sum up?
No, nothing more from me.
Okay, thank you. So what I would like to say is, so I just want to thank all councillors for their engagement in this item and very reflecting the views very well of the King of Barton's Residents Association. And I know there's been a lot of information that has been shared and there's been in regular dialogue with county council officers as well. So there's a lot of information that I'm aware of that has been shared, to be clear. And the public representation and the petition, you will see it's been noted in section 11 of the report. I just clarify that because I thought Councillor Horrell said that it hadn't been, or did I get that wrong?
I think there's two petitions, Councillor Humby. So
right, so that was a separate one. Okay,
a separate one, yeah.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for
giving
that.
very similar information, though.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure that was correct. So, also you see referenced in the report the wider consideration for the Andover Road corridor, including the exploration of the park and ride and bus priority corridors, and the cart and horses junction and the walking and cycling routes. And I think we've covered a lot of that now. And that's already linked to the agreed adoptive Winchton movement strategy. So there is some joining up the dots there, and I think that's done, and including in the major junction on the motorway as well. And I know the impact that has been carefully considered in terms of the cart and horses junction as well. And I think, I see Jackie nodding, and I know there's been a lot of ongoing discussions, if you like, about that, and trying to make sure those discussions lead to an outcome that, you know, that we clearly all want. So I think the important thing is, the point Councillor Warwick made, is that also clear that the County Council is not the determining planning authority and it cannot unilaterally undo the planning application. But we've also been very clear that it's not just for the City Council to do that either. It is for Carla to do that and the Secretary of State. So I think there's some really good joined up work going on between the County Council and the City Council, and acknowledging that and understanding that. And I think it's really important that we make that clear to everybody. However, as I think we've done throughout the development of the local transport plan and the Winchton movement study, local plan, the County Council, I mean, as we've already said in the paper, will continue to engage with all parties and the developer, which David Jousey has already said that has happened and it is still ongoing. And for the local authority to satisfy themselves that the closure of Andover Road to vehicle traffic, as set out in the planning application, is necessary because of the planning application, alongside the County Council responsibility to review the detailed design. I think that's right, David, isn't it? Through the Section 278 approval process. I just want to check that is correct. That's what I said. So looking at that. Okay. All right. So, as I say, I thank all the councillors that have spoken and the way they've reflected those thoughts, and the residents, and that's who they're elected to represent. So, thank you for that, and thank you for making those points really clear. But taking all that into consideration and acknowledging that point about the planning and the process it is and who's responsible for that and who can do that, I am going to accept the recommendations as set out as they are in paragraphs 4 to 6 on pages 35 and 36. And once again, thank all the councillors and members that have spoken on that and the time and effort they put into that. So thank you all. I would say that to Jackie and Jan, if you wish to leave now, you're more than welcome to. If you want to stay on, I'm sure that's fine. But if very happy if you want to leave the meeting at this point.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Jan. Okay, right. Thank you for all that. We will now move on to agenda item 3. That is the fleet and surrounding areas transport schemes update. And I think we have Councillor Stephen Parker wanted to speak first. Stephen, are you there? Stephen, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, I'm here indeed.
Good, thank you.
This is something that I've been working for really since the day I got elected. The provisions we have here are the essential provisions to mitigate against the impact of some large development that we've got, including the Hook and Park development, which has contributed a lot of money towards various mitigations. This has been waiting a long time. It's something like 15 years since the Crook and Park planning consent was issued and the Section 106 agreement was signed, such that we are actually getting fairly close to the date when we'd otherwise have to pay this money back. So we do need to kind of get on with this. And the planning application itself was submitted 20 years ago. So this has been a long time coming. There are some key things here that we really need to get in. Reading Road South is a busy road now. Councillor Collett will be well aware of this. It's a busy road that's got busier since these developments have got into place. And it bisects the catchment of Courtmore Secondary School. So half the pupils at Courtmore, don't anybody start saying 46% or something, but a lot of the kids that go to Courtmore have to cross this road every morning in the rush hour and have to cross it in the afternoon again when they go home. And there have been a number of near misses. We've fortunately not yet had anything significantly serious there, but there have been a number of near misses and a number of parents with their hearts in their mouths as they observe their teenage kids playing chicken with the traffic in the road, because that's what teenage kids will do, give them a chance. So we really do need to get this stuff done. We've got the money, as you'll see in paragraph 23 and following. We've got plenty of money to do some of this stuff. We need the pedestrian crossing on Reading Road South and other stuff as well. Getting from the Church Crookham sites to their catchment school in Council Park, there is a kind of part footway, cycleway route for them that then just peters out on another busy road, Galley Hill Road. The junction of Tweedledown Road and Beacon Hill, these are some of the priorities in paragraph 20. The Tweedledown Road and Beacon Hill Road got much, much busier since the building of a supermarket, maybe half a mile up the road, which itself has contributed a lot of money to the pot. So we really do need to deliver on safety at that junction, because it's very difficult for pedestrians to cross over the road to get to the public ground owned by the MOD so they can recreate. And the traffic there itself is difficult, because the sightlines coming out of Borley Road are appalling at their best. They get worse at Christmas, incidentally, because the Christmas tree seller plants A-boards outside the adjacent pub. So, Chairman, I would commend this report to you. I really do need to get this stuff in place and happening on the ground, certainly before we have to pay the money back to the developers, but really so we can actually make these roads safe. Thank you, Chairman.
Stephen, thank you very much. That's very clear as well, so thank you for that. And I know Dominic will respond to some of that in a minute. I think Dominic's presenting. But I see Councillor Collett. Adrian, would you like to make a comment at this point?
Yes, if I can put my local hat on rather than my leader of the Lib Dem group here hat, I would agree very much with the comments that Stephen Parker has made. The money, it would be tragic if this money ended up going back, and we need to make sure we get the best bang for our buck in terms of what needs doing locally. I was initially alarmed when I saw this report, because there are 3 county councils representing the Fleet Church Crookham area, and only 2 have been invited to be involved in this process. I've since had a discussion with Frank Baxter, who's explained to me why that is the case, and I accept his explanation. I've also had conversations with Carolyn about a problem about division names, where my division name excludes any reference to the Fleet area, even though a quarter of my division is in the Fleet area. So officers, I think, will need to be a little bit more alert, making sure that they are including the people that need to be included. But having said that, I agree with what the paper is trying to do. I think I was thinking this when we were talking about the Andover Road paper a moment ago. We used to have a policy that any paper that referred to any geographical area, we would have a map attached to the report. And I think for those who don't know an area, not having a map attached can sometimes make it very difficult to follow. Now, I know this area well as it happens. But I think that might be a policy you want to give some consideration to going back to, so that there are several papers here today with geographical areas referred to, and unless you know them, it's very difficult to follow. The last point I would make, Chairman, is it's a great shame that levelling up has resulted in us not being able to do anything about the station access roundabout. That very much is an issue for my division, as the railway station is half in my division and half in Councillor Forster's. The boundary goes down the railway line. And I think a lot of residents all around the area will be very disappointed that we can't make progress on that. But we are talking about large sums of money needed, and that clearly now isn't going to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before Dominic comes in, I'm very pleased we had a conversation with Frank, and I was aware that that happened. He said that you fully understood the reasons for that, and I know you spoke to Carolyn as well. That's in the name. I mean, that's something that we can make sure, I think, in terms of that. And it also sort of adds to your point about the maps. I mean, it might actually help the process in terms of the naming. They both go together, don't they, in terms of that? I think that's a really good point. Actually, I don't think that's the first time that's come up. We all assume everybody knows where, but it is useful actually in terms of your role here today. I know you've got two hats on now, but in terms of that role, just to have an understanding of exactly where it is, I think would be useful for everybody. So I'm sure that's something that we could look at and address. And like I say, it helps with that divisional name as well, doesn't it, for everybody to recognise that. So thank you for that. Dominic, I'm going to go to you now to present the paper and maybe the points that both Stephen and Adrian have made about getting on with this, if I can use his phrase.
Yeah, and that's really very much at the heart of what the paper is for, in fact. So really what we're looking to do through this paper is to establish a new set of priorities for Fleet, which is responding to a change in circumstances since the previous set of priorities were identified in 2018. Principally, that's around the funding regime, but also changes in policy. So in bringing this forward, we have spoken to the members particularly affected by the QEB development and the associated contributions from that. And as Councillor Parker rightly points out, those contributions are time limited, and we're very conscious that we want to be able to spend those prior to their expiry. And really that's another element driving the report. Having spoken to members and also having consulted with the QEB steering group, which is a group set up by the district to look at the allocation of the contributions, we've come forward with that revised set of priorities as set out in paragraph 20 of the report, and the report seeks your endorsement of those priorities and approval of those as the next stage of assessment. With regard to the comments, certainly very pleased that Councillor Parker has been able to be engaged and feels that his comments have been picked up through the process, and certainly in regard to Councillor Collett's comments, very much recognise, yes, we do need to stay on top of that issue regarding future contributions and discussions around Fleet.
Dominic, that's great, and thank you very much. Appreciate that, and thanks to both the councillors that have spoken as well, and the points that you made noted about not the urgency necessarily, but the need to sort of keep this moving along to make sure that we do spend that money, because none of us want to be in that position. So I don't think there's probably any further comments from Stephen or Adrian. So all those points were noted. Very much appreciate your contributions as well. So very happy to accept the recommendations as set out in para 2 on page 45. And thank you as well, Dominic. Much appreciated. Thank you. Stephen, it's the same I'll say to you. You're very welcome to stay, but if you would like to leave, if there's something else you'd like to be getting on with, feel free to do so. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman. There's lots I have to be getting on with, but I will go and do it. Thank you very much for getting this paper through. That's very helpful.
Appreciate your comments and thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Right, okay, we now move on to agenda item 4. This is the Rushmore Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. And I think that's you again, Dominic, I understand. Yeah, please.
It is, Leader, and hopefully you won't be too sick of my voice by the time we finish today.
Well, I'll let you know at the end.
So we're bringing 2 LC whips for your approval today. This is the first of those for Rushmore, as in the name of the item tells you. LC whips, as you know, are a very important part of our policy approach towards walking and cycling, and something very much encouraged by government for us to prepare and adopt. So we have been working on a number of these, some of which have been approved already, and some are coming through the process. This item has been the subject of fairly extensive consultation and member engagement. So we're confident that it does reflect local priorities, and what it does do is set out cycling and walking priorities in terms of strategic routes and in terms of core walking zones. The paper sets out the draft LC whip as an appendix, or sorry, as a link from the report. And as you see from the recommendation, what we're asking for is your approval for the draft, and also seeking your endorsement that we would commend the draft to Rushmore Borough Council for them to include that within their suite of policy documents as well with regard to walking and cycling.
That's great, Dominic. Thank you very much. And it's good, I think, partnership work in there. Councillor Chad, I know this is of an interest in your area, and I think you've been involved in quite a few of these conversations. Would you like to make any comment at this point? Ros.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dominic, for the report. Just to say that I fully support this paper. I think it's a great piece of work that's happened, and really reflects the need to improve cycling and walking within the Rushmore area, to not only just to get people back, but to help with those health issues as well that we find in the local area as well. But thank you very much.
That's great, Ros. Thank you for that, and I'm sure that's a sentiment. So, that's why a lot of these schemes have been looked at, done as well. There's all sorts of reasons behind it now, but certainly in terms of the health, and that is a big consideration for everybody now. Nothing from you, Adrian, on this one? No, okay. Dominic, thank you for that, and thank you, Ros. I have no further comments on that. Just pleased to see the paper coming forward, so happy to accept the recommendations in paragraphs 2 to 3 on page 55. Thank you, Dominic. Okay, we will now go on to agenda item 5. Just checking my notes. Basingstoke local cycling and walking infrastructure. And oh, it's a surprise, Dominic. It's you again.
This is the last one, I promise you. So I would be at risk of repeating myself if I introduce this one in the same way, but essentially it is very similar in that it's been through a consultation process. Probably the one thing I would want to just highlight that's slightly different in this case is that the proposals for the very centre of Basingstoke are being developed through the Town Centre Master Plan, which is a joint project between ourselves and the Borough Council. And for that reason, rather than duplicate and perhaps get ahead of that work, if essentially there is a little bit of a hole in the LC whip in that it doesn't come forward with proposals for that central area, they will come through that future work and then will be incorporated into the LC whip in due course.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks very much. And that does show very much a joined up working and an understanding of the processes and making sure they work together and not against each other. Yeah, and it's very similar. Adrian, I imagine no comments on that? No, just checking in. Okay. Yeah, I lost my screen for a second then. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay. So no further comments from me. I'm very happy to accept the recommendations as said in para 2 to 4 on page 63. Thank you very much, Dominic.
Thank you.
With the greatest respect, I hope we might not see you again today, but didn't mean that. Okay, agenda item 6, the Wellbourne Street Manual. I think it's Laura McCulloch is presenting this. Hi, Laura. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Leader. Thank you very much. Yes, this one is my report. So this is about the Wellbourne Street Manual. So the Wellbourne development is a garden community north of Fareham for up to 6,000 homes. As part of the planning permission, Fareham Borough Council requested that a street manual be prepared, which set out the design principles basically for the roads, the streets, the public realm. So the street manual sets out what is expected, and it forms part of the overall design code for the development. So the street manual that you've seen was developed in collaboration with Fareham Borough Council as Planning Authority and Wellbourne Land Limited. And the intention is that it basically sets out the vision and it ensures that that vision is carried through the development, because it's expected to be built out over some 20 years. So it's really important that that vision is actually carried through and that it doesn't get watered down and everybody knows exactly what we've signed up to. So that's the intention. It's been submitted to Fareham Borough Council in discharge of condition 10, although I think it's still with Fareham for processing, so it hasn't gone out to consultation, but it will do shortly. And then once it's been approved by the Fareham Borough Council, it will essentially be an adopted document by both Fareham and the County Council, and then hopefully will be helping to shape the development as it is built out.
Yeah, okay. Laura, thank you very much. Just quickly go to Adrian or Rosno. No comments now. Okay. I think it's one of those things, and I'd previously asked a few questions about this in terms of what the document does, and it does give that clarity about, say, over that planned period, if you like, at that time to doing it, that everybody knows is actually, it assists everybody because everybody knows exactly what they're working to. And, you know, things change, people change over that period of time, but the document doesn't, does it? It stays there, it sits in there. And it's another one of those documents, I think, where it does what it says on the tin, but there's an awful lot of work that goes into it to get to this point. So I'm just saying well done to you and your team to do that. And presumably we'll be notified when Fareham have gone through their process and that document gets adopted as well. So yeah. We'll look forward to that. So thank you very much to you and your team for getting to that. And I understand the process now, having spoken to you previously about what that actually does. So don't think we have any comments on that. So thank you, Laura. Very happy to set the recommendations in paras 2 to 3 on page 73. Thank you very much. Thanks, Laura.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay. Right. We now go to agenda item 7, the membership of Assembly of European Regions. We have 2 county councillors to speak, and I'm going to go to Councillor Joyce first. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Leader. And could I from the outset say thank you to you and also to Gary Westbrook for the time that you've given over recent weeks to have an opportunity to discuss this. As you know, we've spoken a number of times over current and potential future involvement with AER. And you'll recall that I've been seeking for some time to have engagement with Ian Gray, who I think is now interim head of skills and economy, and Teresa Hogsberg, who's the economy strategy manager, primarily to address the challenge of maximising the benefits and opportunities of our AER membership. And you'll recall that at your decision day in January of last year, when you agreed to the recommendation to close the Brussels office and the consequent redundancy of the head of the office, that you had set an expectation that I'd be closely involved as an individual with a specific European role in planning for our future relationship with the Assembly. And as you know, there was no consequent engagement by Richard Kenny, who's no longer with the authority. And so that with a significant time lapse, progress with Ian and Teresa had become even more pressing. And I undertook to give you a summary as soon as I could of AER's operational offer and opportunities, particularly in the context of economic development and partnership working with European regions, and plan to do so in discussion with both Ian and Teresa. And I'd somewhat hoped that either or both would have been able to attend last October's Executive Board and General Assembly, at least to establish contacts and gain some understanding of the organisation. There was both an Executive Board and a hybrid Bureau meeting in early December, at which we were entitled to have 2 nominated voting members, yourself and Councillor Forster, plus 2 subs, not all of whom would normally have attended, but all were eligible to attend with supporting officers. And as it turned out, I was the only available HEC member attendee, and there were no officer registrants. So it was somewhat embarrassing to discover that HEC had not and still has not submitted any member nominations. And that essentially has set up has created an information vacuum, which concerns me in the construction of the report which has come before you today. And as we've discussed in the last couple of weeks, there had been some recent contact from officers, but that was solely to raise the question of termination of membership, not to engage on the function of it. Just by way of history, I mean, AER was founded as a non-EU organisation, regional organisation in the mid-80s. And we, to my knowledge, I mean, this happened before I was elected, but certainly from 2007, we've had an office there in Brussels. Now, the fact that it's there is obviously very convenient because you're close to the coalface. But Hampshire has developed a leading role with AER over time. And just to pick out the fact that the former leader, Honorary Alderman Roy Perry, was a vice president. Subsequently, Honorary Alderman Andrew Gibson as a vice president, and currently I'm a bureau member, or would be if. Technically, I'm not, because it hasn't actually gone through the election process because we didn't nominate, but that's a detail which is easily rectified. But I currently chair the monitoring and evaluation group, or overview and scrutiny, if you like, of the AER, and sit alongside the executive board. And unlike our structures, it gives me, on behalf of Hampshire, an opportunity to steer AER, as indeed the vice presidents have done beforehand. So we have this leading role and so on to ensure that we can influence the strategy, direction, organisation and delivery of it. So it's a role which personally I think would be, providing that the benefits that can accrue, is something that I would be very sad from a purely practical Hampshire benefit perspective, be very sad to see go. The benefits in particular are to do with intelligence gathering, pan-Europe, not confined to EU member regions or EU member countries, but pan-Europe. And as the report brings out, there are 140 regions covering some 25 separate countries. Now that's a broad contact range. They issue a regular bulletin to members highlighting projects, conferences, seminars, business advice and support, interregional, interregional project possibilities as well, not just, for example, EU Interreg. So the opportunities to work with or liaise with other regions is as broad as you can imagine within the wider Europe, accepting that our economy strategy is intended to be worldwide. But our principal trading partner is unquestionably Europe. And we have, post-Brexit, seen something of a decline, no doubt influenced at least in part by the pandemic and consequent recession aspects emanate, well, as one of the prime outcomes of the current aggression in the eastern part of Europe. But essentially, AER is an enabler, a facilitator, and a support for members over the whole range of things that I'm talking about. And I've got some specific examples here, and I don't really want to go into detail, too much detail, because I don't want you or any of the other members listening to lose the will to live any earlier than necessary. But for example, the latest news bulletin in late February this year highlighted, amongst other things, a whole of society approach, cross-sectoral and multi-stakeholder collaboration conference for inclusion. I could translate that for you, but it might take me some time. But I think inclusion and diversity, which incidentally, Councillor or Honorary Alderman Andrew Gibson was the Vice President covering. There will be an illustration of the level of influence, A, that we have, and secondly, the information that we can bring back. Equally, there's also been a major conference on climate change, which Councillor Warwick was unable to attend on that particular occasion, but this is major focus stuff. Equally, there's a conference on empowering regions and cities in migrant integration and governance. And I think you'd agree that that is of current interest to us in more ways than one. And equally, there's an emphasis on the liaison and management of issues surrounding Ukrainian immigration and the like, and a range of programs on youth education. Your Odyssey is the expression they use for that, and Erasmus, which we know quite a bit about, and jobs and skills and so on, which is very much the area where Ian is involved. And unfortunately, even now, there have been missed opportunities where those could have been extremely helpful, but it's just one of those things that has happened. Now, without going into any more detail on that, I did want to come to the report itself and just pick up one or two concerns. I believe the report, as I have read it, essentially focuses on some assumptions on costings and effort and so on, but the focus on benefits is, to all intents and purposes, completely missing. So it's obviously without liaison with AER and an understanding of what they do, it's difficult to see how our officers could meaningfully identify those benefits, which really should be a core part of this report to inform your decision. But the objectives of the County Council, I'm now going to para 11 in the report. It talks about the objectives of the County Council maintaining membership included making connections with European regions, which Hampshire businesses may find beneficial to expand their businesses into, and these links could provide support for the business to do so, as well as selling the benefits of locating and operating in Hampshire, especially for businesses looking to expand into the UK. Now that's inward investment, but going on to say that it's not been possible to evidence any future direct benefits to the County Council nor Hampshire businesses is, I think it would be more correct to say that there's no evidence that has been presented because there hasn't been an attempt or particular effort to investigate or explore what those benefits are. And there are a stack of examples which AER's officers, or indeed I, to some extent, but not the full extent, could have provided. And I think that is an unfortunate gap of information in the report before you. But going on to the actual costs of maintaining membership, I'm somewhat puzzled by this because I think if there was an understanding that we would only have 2 Bureau members, for example, or going to a General Assembly, if we were the only, this is into the future, the only membership, and you don't actually have to send 2, and then to come up with a circa 5,000 inclusive of expenses for an officer to accompany for those meetings in a year. I appreciate that estimates have got to be made, but these things start to tot up. And then in terms of continuous officer support to the tune of 0.75 of an FTE grade G, that's substantially more in effect than the effort that was previously put in directly on this by the former head of the Brussels office. And in conversation personally with officers at AER, they are more than prepared to have a discussion as to what they think is an appropriate level of effort, bearing in mind that they do the work and we simply liaise with them for the most part. Where the work at our end is concerned is actually helping to assess and compile a report which I have an opportunity to submit to help steer the Assembly at an executive board meeting. And that isn't, that added all together is nowhere near 3/4 of a grade G or any other senior officer. So I'm a bit concerned about that. And when it comes to the actual savings, you know, I mean, I appreciate that some of them are referred to as being non-cashable and are not measurable from that point of view. And that is that, bearing in mind that circa 100k was saved by the closure of the office and the head of the Brussels office being made redundant last year, that to then think in terms of a saving in this year, in addition to that, however I've gone through it, it does seem to me rather like double counting, because that effort was not there last year and it's not been there this year. So how therefore is it a saving when we've already removed a 100k by an individual doing the same role? So there is a whole stack of things here which I feel it would be really, really helpful for us to scrutinise and get to the bottom of, and make sure that this is as fully informed as I feel it needs to be, because we have a lot at stake in this organisation. We've invested a huge amount of effort in this over time. And I think, bearing in mind that we are not, we are essentially members in any event up till the end of January next year, that it would be hugely beneficial to actually seize some of that time so that we could look into this and examine it in sufficient detail, and that perhaps you could therefore consider it deferring this decision so that we can carry out that exercise, and in particular grab the opportunity to engage with the Chief Executive and President of AER, with folks such as your good self and Councillor Chad, who only in the last few weeks has been appointed to replace you as a Bureau member, an opportunity to engage and get a better understanding and more fully inform any decision that you would wish to make by simply deferring this till your next decision day, or possibly the one after, to allow sufficient time to examine it in adequate detail. So I'd be very grateful if you would give that due consideration. And I know that Councillor Kempji has one or two other points that he would like to raise. But thank you so much for your time, and I apologise for going on at great length. And I appreciate the comments that you've made about the fact that you consider me passionate on the subject, but I have done my utmost to be objective. So thank you very much.
Andrew, thank you very much, and certainly don't need to apologise for the length of time taken. That's what this process is for, so no problem with that at all. What I'm going to do is go straight over to Mark, if that's okay, Mark, and then let the officers respond to some of those points, and then I'll sum up at the end. But I want to understand and hear some of those points being addressed. Mark, welcome. Over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Leader. Councillor Kempji will be a great deal briefer, you'll be pleased to know. And primarily, I'm speaking to you today as Chairman of the Hampshire Pension Fund Panel and Board.
Yeah.
And I'll come on to that in a moment. But my brief observation of the paper is, first of all, if I may take you through it, Leader, when it says that para 6, that the AAR does not continue to represent value for money, especially in the context of the changing focus of UK international trade policy, I think that's actually playing with policy incorrectly. Can I remind you the favourable comments made about Europe over the recent Windsor, hopefully successful Windsor agreement? And can I also remind you that our new King's first state visit is to be to Germany, and also I think strengthens the feeling that our policy is not to just expand international trade relations, but to actually cement with stronger relationships with Europe. So I think that's a fundamental misjudgment of policy in item 6. I think the fact that Hampshire is the only UK region to be a member of the AER is in fact an immense strength, not a weakness. And I think it requires a great deal of thought before we burn our last bridge to Europe in this respect, and requires much greater scrutiny than I think is afforded by this rather thin paper. I think going on from that, and now turning more to the interest, possible interest of the pension fund and board, as you know, Chairman, the pension fund the Hampshire Pension Fund is a major European investing institution with over £9 billion of assets. It's one of the largest 200 pension funds in the whole of Europe. The pension fund is increasingly international in focus. It is also very interested in developments in climate change, and in the last year we have alone reduced our investments, our commitment, our exposure to carbon across all our investments by 20%, working closely with Councillor Jan Warwick in coordinating our policies with that of the County Council. Do not underestimate for one moment the pension fund's individual interest in climate change and seeking also to cement relationships in this respect with our friends in Europe. Hampshire and the Hampshire region has immense connections with the Europeans in terms of trade, tourism, culture. Our communications are second to none, really, with numerous various services. And indeed, you know, we go to a market in Winchester and you will often see French traders selling cheeses and other French produce. So you can just see what a strong connection there is. Also bear in mind the pension fund is a genuinely Hampshire region institution, including both Portsmouth and Southampton, whose representatives sit on the pension fund. I would very much like to explore with my colleagues in Hampshire, in Portsmouth and Southampton, whether in fact in furthering our interest in economic development, infrastructure development, and all the other areas that we'll be investing in the future, particularly with the Levelling Up programme, whether in fact the pension fund might take on the membership effectively, although the membership may remain with the County Council, but the expenses could be via through the pension funds into pursuing our investment objectives. And you may think it's not common for expenses to be vied between the pension fund and the County Council, but I don't have to tell you that all our officers have their time and expense incurred on pension fund business vied from the County Council. So effectively we pay all our own expenses, and that's a method of varying between the County Council and the pension fund. I note in paragraph 23, to conclude, Chairman, that you don't have to send a letter of resignation until prior to the 31st of December 2023, and I would very much like you to give us 6 months for the pension fund officers to investigate whether we could bar the expense and whether actually it's the pension fund that could really develop this relationship and protect these valuable connections to Europe.
Mark, thank you very much, and absolutely acknowledge your expertise in the pension fund area. And I know there's been correspondence between us as well, and I have spoken to officers about that. What I'm going to do now, so thank you both very much. I'm just going to go to Adrian, and then I'm going to ask Ian to present the paper and address some of those points that you both raised. So thank you very much. Adrian, you had a point to make, or you got your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I listened to Andrew and Mark very carefully, and I didn't really find anything in what either of them said that I didn't wholly agree with. I do think we need a stay of execution here to look more carefully before taking a decision along these lines. I did represent the County Council for 4 years on the AER, along with the late Councillor David Kirk, who I'm sure some of you will remember, although he's not been with us for a while now. And during our time, there was a time when he and I each chaired committees of the AER. I don't know if that's ever been done by any single member of the AER before. They chaired 2 of the committees. And it was a mark of the amount of influence that Hampshire had, but also it was at a time when we were achieving great benefits for Hampshire, and it saddens me to hear that that's not where we are now. I'm very confident that we can be there, and at a time when we need every bit of help we can get, I think it would be foolish not to look again at this before we go down that path and try to find a more positive way forward here. As has been said, this is nothing to do with the EU. This is Europe-wide, regardless of whether nations are members of the EU or not. And it applies when it says region, it means the level of government, the next level of government down below central government, national government. And that's why in England's case, it's county councils. So, Chairman, I very much support the stay of execution that's been requested for. I think there's too much at stake not to do that. I hope you can agree to that.
Thank you, Ada. Thank you for your comments. Much appreciated. I'm now going to go over to Ian to present the report and address some of those issues that have been raised. Ian, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes. So looking through the report, obviously this is a report, as has been outlined, recommending the resignation from the AER and giving the delegation to the Director of Hampshire 2050 to write to implement that resignation. As from the paper, we are taking this decision and recommending based on the previous decision day in January, looking at the formal closure of the Brussels office, and clearly the report, we have looked and evaluated the programs and projects that were achieved previously, and looked at the forward plan with regard to what was in some of the papers we could see in the AGM, and then looking further forward, and have looked through this. And because of Brexit and our focus really with the new economic strategy more on a wider trade than just purely through looking at the benefits of programs such as LEADER program, where we still are in with European funding, as officers we feel that the priority and the value for money should be to widen that further than just purely looking through this AER lens. So clearly that is an issue for us. We are really feeling that the priority has to be to secure further programs and projects through as many different streams as we can, rather than just focusing all our efforts through the AER as we have previously to a certain extent, and as has been pointed out, were successful before Brexit in securing the LEADER programme and other programmes. So from our perspective as officers, we feel the better thing to do is to focus along with our economic strategy and through wider international trade than purely through this relationship. And is obviously a lot of work has been achieved previously, but this the world has changed considerably over the last 2 years, and therefore we're recommending that better use of officer time and better use of our resources would be to focus a wider look at projects and programs linked to our new economic strategy. So that's what we're recommending, Leader.
Okay, but I want to explore a little bit more. I don't know if Carol or Gary might make some comments on terms of the pension fund. I'm trying to understand the relationship between that and the paper and the pension fund. But I just want to come back a little bit on the points Andrew Joy also raised, Councillor Joy, sorry, in terms of the benefits. And so what we are assuming that they might be or not be, but what else, what other organisation would potentially do a similar thing? Because I'm conscious in terms of what we are the only one, and I know both councillors have spoken in terms of they see that as a strength. That was always a concern to me, that we were the only one, and what are the other authorities doing? So I'm just trying to understand that. What other organisations would we work with to look at those benefits? And then I'll come to you, Gary, after that.
So, Leader, I'll answer the first point, if that's okay with you, around the other organisations and looking to what other regions of the UK are doing. I'll then hand over to Carolyn around the relationship with the pension fund.
Okay.
You're absolutely right in terms of the report. The report references the fact that Hampshire is the only UK region currently in membership. There's previously been more UK regional membership, but Hampshire is the last organisation there, which begs the question, as you've articulated, what are other highly respected, highly performing local authorities doing in this space to not only have those sort of economic ties and business relationships with our large trading bloc, but also some of the important thought leadership work that Councillor Joy has referred to, whether that's around climate change or small to medium-sized business enterprises. And it's fair to say when we talk to our colleagues around the country, they feel that their resources are best spent in memberships where we already have a collective voice and a collective presence. So a good example would be the Local Government Association. And so through that local government association and through a network of similar sized organisations and county councils, the equivalent could be said of our relationship with SE7 and also our relationship with the county councils network. It's how through those existing groups and bodies do we get access to those networks and also that overall thought leadership, which is often increasingly sort of tailored and more relevant to the policy context and political context in which we're operating from within the UK, rather than other regions where I fully accept there are things to learn, but they are operating very different, both legal and wider contexts as well.
Okay, thank you. Ian, did you want to come back on any of that? No, actually, I'll go straight to Carolyn. Sorry, Carolyn, so your hand up now. Beg your pardon.
Not at all, Leader. It was just, as you see, coming in on the comment regarding the pension fund. So it was just to say, obviously, if the Hampshire Pension Fund Panel and Board wish to investigate whether membership of the AER were in the best interests of the Pension Fund Panel and Board, that would obviously need to be a separate consideration, with a report going to the Pension Fund Panel and Board in order to consider whether the AER were an avenue that the Pension Fund Panel and Board would benefit from. And if the decision were to proceed with that, it would not be Hampshire County Council as the council joining AER, it would be the Pension Fund Panel and Board, albeit the Pension Fund Panel and Board is under the auspices of HCC, but I would certainly imagine that membership would need to be drawn from the Pension Fund Panel and Board if that were to be a consideration that were agreed. But clearly a competent report would need to go to the panel and board in order to consider whether there were benefits to the pension fund joining AER or not. And I would imagine that's a step that could be taken, but I don't think it gets in the way of you making your decision today, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, just going to go to Ian first, Andrew, then I will come back to you. Is that okay? So we're addressing the current point. So yeah, I understood. Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just to add to what Gary said, we also have relationships with the Department for International Trade, with regional directors, regional managers, which is where a lot of our focus is on both external exporting information, but also inward investment, foreign direct inward investment coming into the countries. So we use that as another organisation to have these type of conversations as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Joy.
Thanks, Leader. I just wonder if we're considering, which I sincerely hope we are, an opportunity to look at things further for a short additional time, whether in fact that is there is any reason why we should not actually take the opportunity to explore the benefits of remaining with AER, which have not been explored at all. There has been no contact by officers and so on for over a year, and I think the opportunity to actually address that ought to be exceptionally informative for your decision in due course. And I think just to comment from my own understanding of the membership of AER, is that I think there would need to be a recognised membership by county rather than specifically the pension fund panel and board, because as been pointed out, the pension fund panel and board is not of itself a region, and that is a procedural difficulty which I'm sure we could find a way around. But I certainly think the investigation of the actual benefits, whereas it has not happened up till now, I would think there's an opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I suspect that's on the point that Carolyn's going to comment on. Yeah, Carolyn, thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. It might just be helpful if I could be clear regarding your decision making. The officer advice is very clear and it is explained in the report before you regarding continued membership of AER for Hampshire County Council. The officers have produced a competent report based on investigation, and that report is before you for decision making. As regards any decision of the Pension Fund Panel and Board, as I said, that would be a separate matter for the Pension Fund Panel and Board to consider. And were the Pension Fund Panel and Board to determine that they were minded to join the AER, that would be a matter for them to determine. Any payments for AER would have to be funded directly from the Pension Fund Panel and Board, and any membership would comprise of the Pension Fund Panel and Board. Otherwise, it would not be competent for them to join AER. And clearly, if the rationale for joining AER is because it is beneficial to the Pension Fund Panel and Board, that is quite distinct from it being beneficial to Hampshire County Council as a county council. There are quite distinct functions that the county council performs separate from the Pension Fund Panel and Board. I know that's slightly complex and sophisticated, but I hope I've managed to make that clear, Leader. So there is nothing getting in the way of you making a determination today, and the Pension Fund Panel and Board at their meeting making a determination around their potential involvement in AER in future. The two can work seamlessly.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Mark, I was going to come to you for your opinion on that. Thank you.
Well, let me just again make the point that under the Levelling Up agenda, as you well know, the Pension Fund Panel and Board is included in terms of contributing up to 5% on local infrastructure issues and investments. And that actually means that the Pension Fund Panel and Board is going to be asked, invited indeed, to participate in economic activity with the County Council. And I understand what the Chief Executive has said, but I think the direction is that times are changing in this respect. And I just leave that thought with you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, would you like to come back on that in terms of the 5%? I'm just trying to fully understand this bit because it was only fairly recently that I understood about the pension fund. So I just want to be absolutely clear myself about that process. I know you've sort of explained it once, but on the point that Councillor Mark Kemp-Hughes has made.
Yeah, I mean, the guidance, and Rob Carr can come in if he would prefer to answer the question. Rob, do you want to deal with this in terms of the infrastructure investment? It might be more appropriate for you to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the 5% relates to local infrastructure investment. And I think the current argument as to whether local means within Hampshire or within the UK. Wasn't aware that it extended to the European area. Not sure if that helps or not.
Mark, do you want to comment back again on that?
Yeah, no, it wasn't so much about whether it should be in Hampshire or in UK, but what it was, it's a clear example that the pension fund is being invited to participate in investment activity in Hampshire. So it's not really totally fair to say that, we're only interested in in investment opportunities. You know, we are being invited to become an active participant in economic activity in Hampshire, and thereby, given our international perspective as well, that increases our interest in investments or co-investments with European institutions. That's my point.
Thank you, Mark. Carolyn?
Yes, just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting anything around the pension fund panel's investments. Of course, it has always had the opportunity to invest in Hampshire, in the UK, in Europe, and indeed beyond the European boundaries. So the Hampshire Pension Fund does though stand in its own right in terms of its decision making. That was the point I was making. We can't mix up the decision making of Hampshire County Council with the decision making of Hampshire Pension Fund Panel and Board, which are quite distinct, and the Pension Board does have very rigid rules that it must operate within. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Andrew, yes.
Just one last comment from me, Leader. I'm struggling to see what the obstacle is, or why there would be any objection to asking officers to go away and more closely examine through direct contact with AER what they perceive as the benefits. And at the same time, I think you would find it beneficial, and I assume for the time being that Councillor Chad, as a Bureau member going forward, to actually have a meeting with the senior elements of AER to have a better understanding. I would feel much happier on behalf of Hampshire and Hampshire businesses, who I see as beneficiaries, if in fact we were to have that engagement without commitment, but at least it would establish understanding and provide evidence of substance to inform a report being brought back in due course.
Okay, understood. Carolyn, you want to come back again?
Yes, sorry, Leader, and sorry to prolong this. I just want to be absolutely clear. The officers have produced a very competent report based on thorough investigation. They have identified the officer views of benefits and value for money within the report. If we were unclear on any of that, we would not have brought forward the report for decision making, and therefore simply continue to place the report before you for your decision. Thank you very much, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else want to say anything else before I sum up, I think? Okay, I think first of all, Andrew, what I'd like to say to you in terms of the engagement that you had, I think in between the two ADs in terms of economic development, because we had a change there, and some of that you could put down to me, the engagement with myself and you, I'm going to say perhaps could have been better at that point, and that. I did have many conversations, and it was in the latter stages of this that we started to engage further. So I acknowledge that and the points that you made to me. I think the bit that I didn't know initially was about the pension fund, but I think Carolyn and Rob have assured me that there is another, if you like, avenue that could be explored to there. You raised that with me, Andrew, and I wasn't aware of that. Clearly the officers have given that a lot of thought. The bit that I think that I struggle with is being the only one, and I know you both said, and even Adrian has said about the benefits of that. The thing that really gets me, and it always has done, is about duplication. And I see that. I know, and you heard Gary Westbrook say, they've spoken to other authorities as well. So it's not just ours. They've spoken to other authorities about what the benefits they had or they weren't getting, and why they were no longer membership. Now, that's why I specifically asked the question around what other what other organisations we could get that same information. And even now, when I look at South East 7 or Cecil, and the strategic leaders as well, the SEEK group, as well as lots of other organisations that we deal with, I see a lot of duplication. And I know, Andrew and Mark, you might see that differently, but that's what I see. And having had the discussions that Gary's had with those other authorities, it does appear to be like that. So I don't see the benefit of pausing or delaying or withdrawing, but I think the answer is going to be exactly the same because of those other conversations that we've had. So I genuinely thank Andrew for all the work that you have done on this and representing the County Council on the forum for a number of years, and obviously acknowledging Mark's expertise in the pension area. But I'm satisfied in terms of that, what the officers are telling me, that what the opportunities still are for that and could be, accepting what you said, Andrew, that it might be a different course or a different route that it's been. But I think you said yourself that is possible potentially to get over that. You questioned the papers, the financial numbers in the papers, and I can assure you I've gone back time and time again, along with Councillor Chad as well, and challenged the officers on the numbers, on the papers, and asking what other information they've had on discussions they've had with other authorities as well. And it has been under intense officer review and scrutiny. And I think that does cover both the direct costs of a membership and the membership fee alongside the travel accommodation and the other things that we'd mentioned as well. But it's about, I suppose, the opportunity costs of officer time. And I acknowledge that could be difficult to calculate and understand. But I go back to my point about duplication and where we get this, where we get a lot of this information and the stats and those, not agreements, if you like, but that information that we use or have done in the past to our advantage. I forget who said now that the world has changed. It has changed. And I think we need to acknowledge that and we need to move and change with that. I am still going back to the point that we are still the only UK region that remains as a member. That has always troubled me from right from the very beginning when I first understood that. And that's why officers, as I say, have spoken to other local authorities as well and tried to understand that. And we do have that other source of networks to do that. So I've taken all that in, and I can assure all the members on the call, I have probably spent more time considering this than the many other papers I've done in the past. And as long as I've had many conversations with Councillor Chad. And Councillor Chad has come back, Ros, and challenged me and the officers as well. And that is perfectly the correct process to do. And you're quite right, Andrew. Ros is now the member. But I am confident within myself to having all the conversations that I've had with the officers, and that is two in terms of Richard Kenny and Ian as well. And the same conversations I had, sorry, not the same conversation, but the same answers I was getting back was consistent. And there must have been a reason for that. And the Chief Executive makes it very clear they would not have put this paper forward if they hadn't done the work and it wasn't a competent paper to go forward. So I am supportive of the recommendations to approve recognition of the County Council membership at the earliest opportunity, noting when that is in January, you said, Andrew, as well. But I did also ask the question, the world has changed and it changes again. What is the position to go back and look at this in the future if that was the case? But at the moment, I don't see the requirement to continue as we are on that basis. I know, Andrew, you'll be disappointed with that. And I mentioned to you previously about other roles potentially within the LGA and work that they are doing so that you still had, if you like, some connection through those organisations and that process. Now, I don't know how that works and what that is, but I think it's something that we could explore. So I am going to accept the recommendations as set out in the paper in Paris 2 to 3 on page 221. But I do genuinely thank all the time and effort that all the councillors and all the officers have put into this paper and the lengthy time we've taken to discuss it. So thank you all very much. Like I said to the other members, you're very welcome to stay and continue. But if you wish to leave at this point, I fully understand. Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to move on to agenda item 8, the Leaders Community Grants and Investing in Hampshire Fund. And I think that's Emma Noyce. Thank you, Emma.
Good afternoon, Leader, Deputy Leader, members. This report covers both the Investing in Hampshire Fund and the Leaders Community Grants. I'll take the recommendations slightly out of order. So first, to go to recommendation 4, This is for the carry forward of a previous Invest in Hampshire fund for Burston Brickworks, and it's an administrative recommendation to allow the money to be carried forward into the next financial year to allow for the phasing of the scheme. Moving on to the awards we're recommending under the Leaders Community Fund. This links to recommendations 2 and 3 in your report and Appendix 2. Just to go through them briefly, officers are recommending Odium Parish Council receives an award of £10,000 to support works to remediate damp in their building. The local member, Councillor Glenn, is very supportive of this. We note that parish councils are not normally eligible for awards under this fund. This is a special case. This previously was a Hampshire County Council building which has been transferred to the parish council, and we understand that the repair and maintenance liabilities they have are somewhat larger than other examples of buildings that we have recently transferred, and therefore we're recommending that we make a one-off amendment to the grant criteria to allow for this award to be paid, noting that this would be the last award to the parish council for this building. Moving on, are you happy for me to move through them?
Yes, please, yeah. As I mentioned right at the beginning, you might not have been there. A lot of these have gone through various reports and discussions and procedures there as well. So I'm well acquainted with them. So I don't think you need to pause every one, but take them through. But I just want to make sure no other member wanted to make a comment. That was all. So I can't see any hands. So yes, press on, please, Emma.
Certainly. The next is for Whitehill. It's for a recommended award of £5,000 towards a roof replacement. Councillor Tree, the local member, is very supportive of this, and again we recommend that this is the last award for this building, for this project under this fund, given the previous support that this organisation has had from the County Council. The next recommendation is for Portsmouth Harbour Marine Festival, a recommended award of £3,000 for the Gosport Marine Festival. The local members are supportive of this, and we are recommending an award in that case. And finally, the Hampshire Duke of Edinburgh Forum, a recommendation of £2,500 for hire of the Great Hall to carry out a Duke of Edinburgh Award event. And note that the forum isn't actually formally associated with the national charity, and therefore it fulfils the criteria of this grant scheme. So those are the awards under this paper, and the recommendations are recorded in paragraphs 2 to 4 of the report.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't see any comments from other members. Just on the point where we make it clear that this is the last time we will fund, do we get any response back from that, or have we had? Because I think that was nearly on all of them, or certainly on 3 of them anyway. Once we've done that and made that clear, is that acknowledged, if I can put it like that?
We send that out in the grant award letter, and then they respond to us accepting the grant award. So there is a form of acknowledgement of that.
So just to be clear, it was accepted on those conditions that would be the last, yeah.
Provided you agree with the recommendations, we then send out a letter award with the conditions.
Yes, yeah, I understand. Okay. And what I always look for, of course, is for the member support there as well. And I was interested on the Odium one, that's an exception because it was in terms of the library in the first place. Yeah. Councillor Adrian. You're on mute, Adrian.
Thank you.
No worries, sorry.
About organisations not being able to apply again. Are there any here that are not being told that?
The criteria for the grant scheme are very explicit in that we do not repeat fund the same project. So the Leaders Community Grant funding is for one-off projects. It's where we have organisations that in these cases have received significant funding from the County Council for very similar projects before, that we're recommending that they are not awarded again. So it's entirely within the criteria of the grant scheme that these conditions are made.
So if they came up with a completely different project, they could come back to us again.
It's possible for an organisation to apply to the leader for a different project. Yes.
And I don't mean in a contrived way. Yes,
yes, indeed that. Yes, a different sort of route. Yes.
Of course you didn't, Aidan. Yeah, that was the sort of the point I was getting to as well. So thank you for Aidan. That was very helpful on there. No other comments. Sorry, no other comments from other members. So thank you, Emma, for explaining all that and all the work through that's put into that So very happy to accept the recommendations in para 2 to 4 on page 229. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 9. I think this is you again, Emma. Parish and Town Council Investment Fund, pupil and larger grants.
Indeed, this is for Church Crookham Parish Council, who have already completed a number of energy saving works to their building, and this application is for solar photovoltaic panels, £19,500. The local member is aware of the application, and our specialist officers are in support of the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, this is sort of an enhancement on previous works that have done. It adds value. I'm always looking for the added value for these sort of things.
We take a very clear approach, which is fabric first. So we will only consider grant funding through this award when all the other measures to ensure that the building is as energy efficient as possible have been taken.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'm just checking on my other papers as well. Okay, no member. Any comments? Can't see anything. No, Ros and okay. My screen's done a funny. Apologies for that. Emma, thank you very much. Thanks for presenting that. I'm very happy to accept the recommendations as set out in Paras 2 on page 243. Thank you, Emma. Okay, right. So now on agenda item 10. Chief Officer Delegation Register, Gary Westbrook, to report.
Thank you, Leader, and hello, Deputy Leader, as well. This is probably the most straightforward paper on the agenda today. It's a procedural one, as you would have seen at previous briefings, around previous delegations, which you'll see in the appendix, which now need to be reappointed from the recently retired and vacated role of Director of Economy, Transport and Environment. Following our organisational restructure, the paper is recommending those historical delegations and go to the Director of Universal Services. Leader, you'll see in Appendix 1 exactly what those delegations relate to. There are no new delegations. It's simply reappointing those at the Director of Universal Services.
Yeah, okay. I think it's effectively it's just tidying up from where we were previously. So I just said a very straightforward report. I can't imagine any comments, but I'll just check in terms of members. No. Okay. So very happy to accept. No, Adrian? No, just checking. No, okay. So happy to accept the recommendations in Paras 2 on page 249. Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay, we now need to move into exempt session. So I'm just going to read the formal notice, which excludes the press and the public, before asking the webcast to be ended. So first of all, that the public be excluded from the decision day during the following item of business, as it is likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted, or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during this item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information within Paras 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and further that in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemptions outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for reasons set out in the report. Can I now ask that the webcast be stopped, please, and confirmed when it has, please? Thank you, Louise.
Will do, Leader.